Hey everybody, this is Perch. With the collapse and it's funny. It was a very kind of publicly humiliating collapse of Diamond, and what was funny to me was one, everyone who was paying any kind of attention for the last 10 years could see this coming a mile away, and two, the people who are like, nope, nothing to see here. Like there was a level of who was that spokesman for Saddam Hussein? If you're old enough to remember that during the Iraq War, it's like everything is fine, we're winning, and it's like the city is burning behind him. It's been strange to see the handful of people talk about like this is completely normal. Chapter 11, no problem. Lying about things in your forms, not keeping records. Oh, this is normal. What are you talking about? Nothing to see here. This is all fine. Like there's a level of like, you got to be kidding me. Aspect to this. I mean, it's on brand, unfortunately, for a lot of comics journalism, and it is what it is. But yikes. Anyway, so a lot of people have questions about what happens now. Where do comics go from here? In fact, that's the mail we're reading right now. Where do comics go from here? Distribution and sales question. Sounds good. It says, hi, Perch. Thank you for the recent commentary and observations on the American direct market. In particular, continuing to sound the alarm that comics appear to be shrinking their audience and availability. By the way, one note on this. The comic, there's several people in the comic industry, and I get why. So I want to explain this in a nuanced way. There's people who are really lunging at every piece of good news. You know, you have a comic that sells well. Okay, so like Absolute Batman sells well. That's good. That doesn't pick up the entire comics industry, and nor is it a sign that everything is fixed. We've gotten to this weird habit. To me, it's just one more sign that things are troubled, where, you know, a comic with variant covers is that does well, a number one issue, gets like, everybody's like, the problems are over, we're good. And it's like, oh my God, no. Again, the drop off of a lot of these, you know, overall, so these comics are steep. Events don't sell like that. There's problems here. And that doesn't, but look, I get why you can't walk around doom and gloom like, hey, we did well, but we're still fucked. You can't say that either. But what worries me about it from a business perspective is that, you know, there's really just, you know, there's people who want to fix comics and make it strong and grow the business, even if you don't like the word fix comics. Some people don't, but you want to grow it. You know, that cool, you know, and you want to kind of build on success. Good, like that. But, you know, saying that everything is fine now makes me think you're not going to fix, you know, anything. That you're basically, your goal is not to do anything for comics. Your goal is to kind of give the finger to the people saying there are problems in comics. And there's definitely a group of people out there who, that, you know, the comic is secondary. The sticking it to, you know, the haters is primary. And that's not going to get anyone anywhere. There are good things that have happened, you know, but as a business, you know, there are still problems. There are grave problems. There are, you know, some really big things that have to be overcome. Anyway, back to this mail. So I've been curious about what and where new sales channels could be to expand and reach the access to this amazing medium, and wondered your own thoughts for where might comics go from here. With the popularity of scholastic book fairs at schools, could there be a place for comic fairs? Is it providing a comic each time someone buys a Venom t-shirt with McFarlane art on it, but the person wearing the shirt has no awareness of the story it's based on and who McFarlane is? Actually, let's pause for a minute. I think, look, there's a bunch of channels we have to open up. Schools is one of them. However, for a lot of people listening to this right now, that, you know, that doesn't exactly mean what you might think it means. You know, for example, we mentioned Absolute Batman earlier. You're not going to put Absolute Batman in a scholastic fair in an elementary school. It's not going to work. The school's not going to go for that. School shouldn't go for that at that age group. So you're going to have something that is more junior. And unfortunately, if you're, you know, for example, if you're Marvel, you're going Unstoppable Wasp, Squirrel Girl, Miss Marvel. Those attempts from, you know, 2016, 2018, those are the ones that logically they're going to want to put into schools. They will also put in like super dumbed down childlike Spider-Man and Avengers comics. They won't be comics I'm making an assumption of who you are listening to this right now. I don't think they're going to be comics that you would like. And therein lies a bit of the problem, because that would be a great sales channel. They need to find the right balance of how to put these books out, have it not cause a problem with the school and with parents and everything else, and then build from there. The goal is you try to get kids excited about comics, get them in with very simple stories, and then expand. The reality is, if you go back to comics in the 60s and the 70s, a lot of them feel very kind of innocent, very pure. They weren't doing big things. I make this point from time to time. People are like, well, what about the time they killed Gwen Stacy? Yeah, they did kill Gwen Stacy, but look at how they did that and compare it to Blood Hunt. Okay, it's not the same. The Gwen Stacy death, while traumatic, was handled in a PG way, almost G-rated way. A lot of comics back then were, and so you do have to balance that. But schools are a very obvious place that comics should go. And I think that's, if you want to look at one reason why Scholastic and stuff like Babysitter Club and stuff like Dogman and stuff like My Hero Academia in manga and other things, why they've done well, a lot of them are offered in schools. That's what does it. My younger daughter loves graphic novels. The origin point, no matter how many times I tried to get her to read the thousands and thousands of I have around my house, it was Scholastic that did it. So anyway, back to the mail. It says, on another note, there's other channels as well, of course. On another note, with the rise of variant incentives from the publishers and an increase in the buy the bundle, if you're DC, Skybound, etc., has this further skewed the data as to what gets reported by ICV2 and Bleeding Cool as to what sales and market share are actually based on? I'm thinking that this is the road to 400,000 copies or 850,000 copies is based on buying bundles for $1, or so then reporting companies' market share is disingenuous. That is true. Maybe I'm not familiar enough with this topic, but it would be a funny thing to discover the data reported is inflated by bundles, and a company such as IDW might actually be generating more actual revenue based on its releases. Yes to the first one, no to the second. I mean, look, first off, the numbers from ICV2 that get reported are estimates or guesstimates based on an amalgamation of Comic Hub data that then Bleeding Cool picks up and runs with. Sometimes, those sites utilize, like very, very strong guesswork to kind of pinpoint what's going on. It's just not. It's not accurate information. The accurate information out there you have to get from Penguin Random House directly. There's a couple other sources, but you have to go more to the source. You can't use a comic ordering system that's in a less than 1/50 of the amount of comic shops out there and then say, well, this is probably representative of the whole market. It isn't. I'm sorry, it's just not. But and by the way, I was having this argument as well, and they're like, yeah, but so you just think comics are doing worse? Some are, and some are doing better. Like it cuts both ways. The inaccurate data, I mean, some data is higher, some data is lower. It's like that, but it's not an amazing guess to say, well, the top selling books over at DC are probably, Batman, and the new ones. The absolute ones are the last newest, biggest launch. So, over in Marvel, biggest selling books, Spider-Man, Avengers, those in theory should be the biggest selling books. Sometimes they're not, but the overall numbers are dropping. But a lot of this data, keep in mind, the idea with bundles is that you do incentives and you do all-in-one buys, and you do, back in the day there were really rich loot crate deals that Skybound used to take advantage of, and that would boost the numbers up. And you can't fluidly go between unit sales and dollar sales. Those are different things. So humor me in case you are not aware of what the difference is. Unit sales means copies sold. The copy could be sold at a slash discount of 1 penny, or it could be sold as $5.99. A unit sale is a unit sale. Okay, sell 10 copies, that's 10 unit sales. The dollar share or the dollar figure is, okay, actually how much was made. If you sell 10 copies at a penny, you've made 10 cents. If you sell 10 copies at $10, you made $100. And so that's a very different level of measurement. That's one reason why Spawn, which kept its price low for a long time, you'd see it lose on dollar share, but pick up a little bit in unit share. That's and by the way, no shenanigans about this. You should be looking at both sets of data, but they are very different pieces of data. And people in comics from time to time like to float between the two. They'll use one when it benefits their argument, and then they'll use the other when it benefits their argument. And sometimes they mix the other two up. Like, Spider-Man did 50,000 copies this month, and its dollar share was it made so much money in dollar share because it was an anniversary issue that cost $7.99. I mean, to say anyway, those details matter, I guess, is the point. And there are there's a lot of gaming the system where this is concerned. Mail in, see it. Thanks for your time enthusiasm. Yeah, I hope so. Look, in general, creators, everybody should have a very clear role, right? Creators should be working on how do you make exciting, sustaining, stories that are going to hook readers and pull them in and get them excited and get them buying more and grow the share and everything else. How do you get people like that? And, other people at the publishers, people in distribution and marketing and sales, they should be thinking about, how do I open up another distribution channel this week? Where are people going? Where might they buy comic? Where is it successful? Where is it sustainable? Should we get back into the grocery stores? Okay, let's look at the data of how magazines are going. Oh, that doesn't look like a great place to go. Okay, is there a play to put digest there instead? Is that an option? Okay. What about the airport? Well, maybe, but the audience is skews in the airport tends to be, older men on, business trips and tourists. Are those people likely to buy a comic? Well, maybe, but what would that look like? It can't be our full line. We're putting out 80 comics a month, so they're not all going to sit in an airport. So these conversations need to be had, and they do get had. I mean, it's not like they're not having them, but there is a lack of ownership in these places. There is a distinct lack of, I'm not going home tonight until I figure this one out. And that is a problem. If more comics to survive, and I much love and much respect to all the creators out there that reach out to stores and talk to retailers and push the issues. Bless you, you're doing great work. That won't save comics. It's a yes and. That's great. Doesn't hurt. Retailers appreciate it. Current audience appreciates it. It helps. Where else can it go? That is the burning platform that has to be addressed. And it really, think about it like a multiplier. If you're a creator with a really good idea and a way to get people into your comic and to get people to come back the next month and buy it, you think you've got the code cracked. All right. Then you need more distribution channels. That's the multiplier of your good idea. If you think you could take your copy of your comic up 20% in the comic shops because your idea is so good, then get the comic into more places, and that 20% gets applied to a much wider unit sale number. And that's how you pull more people into shops. That's how you get more people regularly hooked on comics. That's how you get this kind of lifetime adventure going for people. But anyway, thanks for writing in. Thanks for the one-sided conversation as it is. And thanks for listening.